Alex's world crashed down around him the moment he was expelled from the elite Crestwood Academy, simply for the sin of being a farmer's son. Principal Thorne's ice-cold words, "You don't belong here," echoed in his ears, a bitter anthem of prejudice. He walked home, each step heavier than the last, dreading the inevitable. But the very next morning, an impossible sight ripped through the sky. A sleek black helicopter, belonging to one of the nation's most powerful billionaires, descended onto the school grounds. Every student and teacher froze in bewildered shock. What did this unprecedented arrival mean for the young man who thought he'd lost everything? Prepare to witness a story of injustice, incredible power, and the unexpected turn of a young man's destiny. Let the journey begin. Alex's backpack hit the dusty ground with a soft thud, but the hollow ache in his chest was far worse. He stared at the imposing stone facade of Crestwood Academy, its grand gates now seeming to mock him. Had he truly just been expelled? All because he was a farmer's son? Principal Thorne's icy words echoed in his mind, sharp and cutting. This institution is for respectable families, for students with real potential. You don't belong here, Alex. Holding back a torrent of tears, Alex walked the long, familiar road home, each step a fresh wave of dread at the thought of facing his parents. He'd done everything right, hadn't he? He'd studied harder than anyone, sacrificed sleep to help his father on the farm, all for the chance to prove himself worthy of Crestwood. Yet, here he was, cast out. The next morning, just as the early bell was about to chime at Crestwood Academy, a deafening roar tore through the crisp morning air. Every single student and teacher froze, eyes darting to the sky. A massive black helicopter, sleek and powerful, descended with a furious rush of wind, settling gracefully onto the manicured front lawn. The blades whirred, sending ripples of dust and astonishment through the stunned crowd. Teachers exchanged bewildered glances. Principal Thorne, his face a furious crimson, stormed outside. "What is the meaning of this?" he barked, his voice barely audible over the fading thrum of the engine. Then, the helicopter door swung open, and an unearthly silence fell across the entire school. The collective breath of Crestwood Academy seemed to catch in the wind as the helicopter's powerful blades slowly spun to a halt, scattering stray leaves and dust across the impeccably maintained lawn. Students shielded their faces, their hair whipping wildly, some reaching for their phones to record the unprecedented sight. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who is that? Is it a celebrity? But no one truly grasped the magnitude of what was unfolding. Crestwood was an elite institution, prestigious and exclusive. But even for them, a billionaire's helicopter landing on their front lawn was beyond unheard of. Principal Thorne, his face a mask of indignation, marched forward, trying to project an air of authority he clearly didn't possess. "Who authorized this? Who do you think you are?" he bellowed, attempting to seize control of a situation that was rapidly spiraling out of his grasp. But his voice was lost in the palpable tension. All eyes were locked on the helicopter's door as it finally swung fully open. A figure emerged, his presence commanding immediate, absolute attention. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a sharp, dark suit that seemed to absorb the light around him, his shoes polished to a mirror-like sheen. His dark sunglasses reflected the stunned faces of students and staff alike. Behind him, two more men, equally well-dressed and radiating an unreadable calm, followed. But it was the subtle, elegant insignia emblazoned on the side of the sleek black helicopter that sent a fresh wave of shock through the trembling crowd. Vance Holdings. Everyone knew that name. It was synonymous with power, innovation, and an almost incomprehensible wealth. Vance Holdings controlled sprawling industries, from cutting-edge technology to global agricultural solutions, and their influence stretched across continents. The man standing before them was none other than Elias Vance himself, one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the modern world. Principal Thorne's anger faltered, replaced by a desperate flicker of nervousness. He adjusted his tie, clearing his throat, his previous bluster evaporating like mist. "Mr. Vance," he stammered, forcing a sickly, polite smile, "this is certainly unexpected. How can Crestwood Academy be of service to you today?" Elias Vance didn't reply immediately. He removed his sunglasses, his sharp, intelligent gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd, taking in every face, every nervous fidget. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, powerful, and resonated with an undeniable authority. "I am here for Alex Miller." Gaze rippled through the students. Alex? The diligent student, yes, but also the farm boy they had laughed at just yesterday? The same Alex who had been unceremoniously thrown out of school in disgrace? Principal Thorne blinked, caught completely off guard. He let out a forced, brittle chuckle. "Ah, Alex, I see. Well, Mr. Vance, I'm afraid he is no longer a student at our distinguished institution." Elias Vance's eyes, now unshielded, darkened perceptibly. "I am aware," he said, his voice laced with an almost imperceptible edge of steel. "That is precisely why I am here." Alex's name spread through the school like wildfire, whispered from student to student, punctuated by disbelieving murmurs. Those who had mocked him just hours earlier now looked at each other in bewildered silence. Bradley, the wealthiest and most arrogant student, who had taken particular pleasure in Alex's public humiliation, shifted uncomfortably, the smug smirk wiped clean off his face. The air crackled with a new, strange energy. Meanwhile, inside his modest farmhouse, Alex was still in bed, staring at the ceiling, the raw wound of humiliation still throbbing. He had spent most of the night replaying the events of the previous day. The principal's cold words, Bradley's sneering face, the sheer injustice of it all. His parents had tried their best to comfort him, their soft words and gentle touches doing little to ease the gnawing ache in his chest. He had worked so incredibly hard, pouring his heart and soul into his studies to earn his place at Crestwood, only to be tossed aside as if he were nothing. Then he heard it, the unmistakable, thunderous roar of a helicopter. The entire small house trembled slightly from the vibration, a phenomenon so out of place in their quiet rural town that it sent a jolt through Alex. He shot up in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. Who in the world would be landing a helicopter out here? His father was already at the door, his face pale with confusion. Alex quickly pulled on a shirt and ran outside, his breath catching in his throat at the sight before him. Parked directly outside their humble farmhouse, dwarfing their weathered pickup truck and casting a long, imposing shadow, was the same sleek black helicopter that had just landed at Crestwood Academy. And stepping out of it, with the kind of gravitas that could shake mountains, was Elias Vance. Alex's mother clutched her husband's arm, her voice barely a whisper. That is Elias Vance." Alex could hardly breathe as the billionaire, his gaze sharp and direct, locked eyes with him and took a deliberate step forward. Alex felt frozen in place, like a deer caught in headlights as Elias Vance walked toward him. The billionaire's presence was overwhelming, a palpable force. His movements were precise and controlled, each step deliberate. His expensive shoes crunched softly against the gravel of the farmhouse driveway, and Alex could hear the frantic pounding of his own heart in his ears. His parents stood stiffly beside him, their expressions a mixture of awe, apprehension, and profound confusion. "You are Alex Miller?" Vance's voice was deep, resonant, and carried an undeniable authority. It was not a question, but a statement, as if he already knew everything about Alex, as if his very existence was simply a fact to be acknowledged. Alex swallowed hard, his throat tight, and managed a stiff nod. "Yes, sir." Elias Vance studied him for a long moment, his gaze unwavering, before glancing around at the modest farmhouse, the surrounding fields that stretched out under the morning sun, and the rusted old tractor parked near the barn. His eyes returned to Alex, and then, to everyone's shock, he extended his hand toward Alex's father. "Your father is Daniel Miller?" Vance said, turning slightly toward the older man. "We worked together many years ago." Alex's father hesitated, a flicker of bewildered recognition in his eyes, before cautiously taking Vance's outstretched hand. "Yes, sir," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I worked on one of your early agricultural projects back when I was much younger. You helped me get my start." Vance gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "And from what I understand, your son was expelled from Crestwood Academy yesterday." Alex felt his stomach drop, the fresh shame of that moment returning, along with the deep humiliation of being thrown out like he was worthless. He glanced away, clenching his jaw, the injustice a bitter taste in his mouth. "Yes," he admitted quietly, the word barely a whisper. Vance's expression remained unreadable, his face a stoic mask. "Tell me what happened." Alex hesitated, but his father gave him a reassuring nod, a silent encouragement. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Alex recounted everything. The principal's unfair decision, the disdain in his voice, the way Bradley and his friends had mocked him, and how he had been dismissed as if he did not belong, as if his hard work meant nothing. By the time he finished, his hands were balled into tight fists, his body trembling with reignited anger. There was a long silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant caw of a crow. Vance turned to one of the men standing behind him, a tall, sharp-looking assistant who seemed to anticipate his every need. "I want a full report on Crestwood Academy's board and administrative history. Now." The assistant nodded immediately, pulling out a sleek tablet and typing with practiced speed. Vance turned back to Alex, his gaze intense, piercing. "I do not tolerate injustice, Alex. Your father was one of the hardest-working, most honest men I have ever met. And if you have even half of his determination, then Crestwood Academy made a grave mistake." Alex's father's eyes widened, a mixture of pride and disbelief washing over his face. "Sir, I appreciate you coming all this way, but—" Vance held up a hand, cutting him off with a subtle, dismissive gesture. "This is not about appreciation, Daniel. This is about setting things right." He turned back to Alex, his gaze firm, unwavering. "Get in the helicopter." Alex's breath caught in his throat. "What?" Vance's tone was absolute. "You are coming with me. We have unfinished business at Crestwood Academy." Alex's mother took a worried step forward, her voice laced with concern. "Sir, what exactly are you planning?" Vance glanced at her, his expression calm but unyielding. "I am going to make sure your son gets the future he deserves." Alex exchanged a stunned look with his parents. A day ago he had lost everything, his future shattered, his dignity stripped away. And now, one of the most powerful men in the country was standing in his driveway, telling him to step into a billionaire's helicopter. Alex took a deep, shuddering breath. This was insane. This was impossible. And yet, deep down, something told him his life was about to change forever. The powerful roar of the helicopter blades filled Alex's ears as he strapped himself into the plush leather seat. He could hardly believe what was happening. Just yesterday, he had been humiliated and expelled, feeling utterly worthless, a nobody. Now he was sitting beside Elias Vance, a billionaire whose name carried more power and influence than the entire Crestwood Academy board combined. As the helicopter lifted off the ground, a familiar surge of adrenaline coursing through him, Alex glanced out the window. His parents stood below, growing smaller with each passing second, watching with expressions of shock and uncertainty. His mother clutched his father's arm, as if unsure whether to be proud of him or terrified for him. Alex swallowed hard. He had no idea what awaited him, but he knew one thing. This was not just a ride. This was a mission. Vance sat calmly across from him, reading something on a sleek tablet, while one of his assistants whispered updates to him through a discreet headset. Alex could feel the immense weight of Vance's presence. Every subtle move he made was calculated. Every word he spoke carried immense importance. After a few minutes, Vance turned to him, his sharp eyes piercing. "Do you know why I am doing this?" Alex hesitated, trying to find the right words. "Because you knew my father?" Vance nodded slowly, but leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping just enough to make it feel confidential. "That is a part of it. But there is another reason. I do not believe in wasted potential." He tapped the screen of his tablet, turning it toward Alex. A detailed profile of Alex's academic achievements, his grades, his test scores, filled the screen. "You have a perfect academic record. You scored higher than 99% of students in the state on your exams. You are not a troublemaker. You were expelled because of prejudice, Alex, not because of anything you did wrong." Alex's eyes widened, a strange mixture of validation and awe washing over him. He had known he worked hard. He had known his grades were good. But hearing it spoken like that, so matter-of-factly, as if his inherent value was undeniable, sent a strange, exhilarating rush through him. Vance continued, his voice gaining a subtle edge of conviction. "I built my empire from nothing, Alex. People like Crestwood's principal believe success is only for those born into privilege. They think they decide who deserves opportunity. They are wrong." Alex clenched his fists. For the first time since his expulsion, he felt something profound shift inside him. Not just anger, but a deep, burning sense of purpose, a quiet determination to prove everyone wrong. The helicopter began its descent, the familiar rooftop of Crestwood Academy growing larger beneath them. The school looked just as imposing as ever, its stone walls and massive front entrance designed to intimidate. But now, Alex saw it through a different lens. Students and staff were already gathered outside, staring up in confusion and awe as the black behemoth descended. Some pointed, whispering furiously to each other, their faces a mixture of fear and excitement. The moment the helicopter touched the ground, Vance unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out with the unshakable confidence of a man who owned everything he walked upon. Alex followed, his heart pounding in his chest, a nervous thrill mingling with a surge of anticipation. Principal Thorne stood among the crowd, his face pale, his eyes wide with a dawning horror as he recognized the man approaching. Vance did not slow down. He walked straight toward the principal who had thrown Alex out, stopping mere inches away from him, his presence utterly dominating the space. "I assume you know who I am, Principal Thorne," Vance said, his voice calm but sharp as a razor's edge. Thorne swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Mr. Vance, Vance cut him off, his voice unwavering. "You made a mistake, Principal Thorne, a very expensive one." He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping over the gathered students, the nervous teachers, and the bewildered board members who had rushed outside. "This school," he announced, his voice carrying clearly across the entire courtyard, "claims to shape the future, yet it discards hardworking, talented students like Alex Miller without a second thought, simply because of their background. The principal tried to interject, his voice a frantic squeak. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. We have policies." Vance ignored him completely. He turned to one of his assistants, his voice sharp and precise. "How much is the largest donation ever made to Crestwood Academy?" The assistant checked a file on his tablet. $1 million, sir." Vance nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on Principal Thorne. Then, in a voice that carried across the entire courtyard, silencing every whisper, he said, "I will donate $10 million today, under one condition." An absolute suffocating silence fell over Crestwood Academy. Everyone stared at him, holding their breath, waiting for his next words. He turned back to Thorne, his eyes cold and unwavering. "You will reinstate Alex Miller immediately, and you will publicly apologize to him, here and now, in front of everyone." Principal Thorne's face turned a mottled crimson, a mixture of rage and terror. "Mr. Vance, that is highly irregular. We have procedures. We cannot simply—" Vance's expression did not change. Not an inch, not a flicker. "You have 5 seconds to decide, Principal Thorne." Alex stood frozen, watching the most powerful man he had ever met take absolute, undeniable control of the very institution that had tried to destroy him. Principal Thorne's lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes darted frantically between Vance, the equally stunned board members, and the sea of students who were now recording the entire scene with their phones. The entire school was holding its breath, waiting for his response. Alex stood motionless, his heart pounding so loudly he could hear it echoing in his ears. Was this really happening? The man who had thrown him out, who had called him an embarrassment, now had mere seconds to reverse his decision or risk incurring the wrath of a billionaire. Vance checked his watch, a subtle, deliberate movement. 4 seconds, Principal Thorne." Thorne cleared his throat, a dry, rasping sound. "Mr. Vance, I understand your concerns, but these matters require proper due process. We have protocols. 3 seconds." Sweat formed on Thorne's brow, beading and trickling down his temples. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale. The weight of Vance's offer and his immense power pressed down on them like an iron fist. $10 million was a fortune, a sum the school could not afford to lose, especially in the face of such public scrutiny. 2 seconds, Vance said, his voice even, but the warning unmistakable, chilling. Thorne inhaled sharply, his chest heaving, then let out a forced, brittle chuckle that sounded more like a choked sob. "Of course. We would be honored to welcome Alex Miller back. This has all been a complete misunderstanding." His voice trembled slightly as he turned toward the assembled students and staff, forcing a wide, unconvincing smile. "As the principal, I take full responsibility for this oversight. I deeply regret any unfair treatment Alex may have received, and I officially reinstate him immediately." Alex's stomach tightened. The apology sounded rehearsed, hollow, utterly insincere. But it didn't matter. He had won. Vance did not react right away. He let the silence stretch, just long enough to make Thorne sweat even more, to make him squirm under the collective gaze of the entire school. Then, with a small, almost imperceptible nod, he gestured toward his assistant. "The paperwork will be sent to your office, Principal Thorne. Make sure it is processed today." Thorne nodded quickly, almost frantically, wiping his forehead with a trembling hand. "Yes." "Of course, Mr. Vance. Immediately." The moment Thorne stepped back, the students erupted in a cacophony of excited whispers. Some of them grinned at Alex. Others looked completely stunned, their mouths agape. He could hear bits and pieces of their murmurs. "I can't believe this. He got expelled yesterday, and now he's back. A billionaire just fought for him." Alex exhaled slowly, trying to process what had just happened. Less than 24 hours ago, he had been humiliated in front of the entire school, his future seemingly dashed. Now he had returned in a helicopter, backed by one of the most powerful men in the country. Vance turned to him, his voice quiet, almost intimate amid the clamor. "This is not just about coming back, Alex. This is about what comes next." Alex nodded, unsure of what to say. Vance had saved him, had fought for him, but he had a feeling this was only the beginning of something much, much bigger. The billionaire looked at his assistant and gestured toward the waiting helicopter. "Let's go. We have work to do." Alex hesitated. "Wait, I have to stay, right?" Vance smiled slightly, a rare, genuine curve of his lips. "You can if you want. But I am offering you something better, Alex." Alex's stomach flipped, a jolt of pure excitement shooting through him. "Better?" Vance stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Alex could hear. "I am funding a new scholarship program for students like you. Students who work hard, who have immense talent, but are overlooked or disadvantaged by their circumstances. You, Alex, will be its first recipient." Alex blinked, his mind reeling. "What does that mean?" "It means you will not just be returning to this school," Vance clarified, his gaze intense. "You will be moving forward. I want you to train under my team, learn from the best in every field. Business, technology, agriculture. Education is important, yes, but real-world experience is what sets leaders apart. You have potential, Alex, a rare and valuable kind, and I intend to make sure you use every ounce of it." Alex felt his throat tighten, tears pricking at his eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming hope. A part of him wanted to stay, to prove to Thorne and the rest of Crestwood that he belonged here, that he was worthy. But another, deeper part of him knew the truth. This was bigger than Crestwood Academy. This was his chance to break free from everything that had held him back, from the narrow expectations of his background. His father's words echoed in his mind, words he had heard countless times. "Opportunities don't wait, son. When one knocks, you open the door wide." Alex swallowed hard, met Vance's expectant gaze, and made the biggest decision of his life. "I'm in." Alex took a deep, fortifying breath as he stepped toward the helicopter, the roar of its turbines already spooling up. The moment felt unreal, like a scene from a dream. Less than 24 hours ago, he had been humiliated, expelled, and told he would never amount to anything. Now, he was about to leave Crestwood Academy, not in shame, but with a billionaire who saw something in him no one else had. His father, standing a few feet away, watched him carefully. Alex turned toward him, searching his face for any hesitation, any hint of worry. But instead of concern, his father's eyes held something else, something profound and unmistakable: pride. "You always told me to grab opportunities, Dad," Alex said, his voice a little hoarse over the growing din. "This is the biggest one I've ever had." His father nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. "You're right, son. Go. Go make something incredible of yourself. Don't you ever let anyone tell you what you're worth." Alex swallowed hard, wanting to say more, to thank him for everything. But the sheer force of the helicopter blades made conversation difficult. Vance's assistant gestured for him to climb inside. He glanced back one last time at the students, the teachers, and the stunned, bewildered faces of those who had doubted him, those who had laughed. Then, without looking back again, he stepped inside the sleek cabin. The door closed with a soft hiss, sealing him inside, and within seconds, the helicopter lifted off. The entire school shrank below him, the crowd of students becoming nothing more than tiny, insignificant dots. Alex leaned back in his plush seat, his mind still racing, still trying to grasp the enormity of it all. Vance sat across from him, his expression once again unreadable. "You made the right decision," Vance said, his voice cutting through the thrum of the rotors. Alex exhaled slowly. "It feels unreal." Vance gave a slight nod. "That feeling will pass. Soon, you will realize this is exactly where you are meant to be." Alex glanced out the window, watching as they soared high above the city, the urban sprawl unfolding beneath them like a vast, intricate map. "Where are we going?" Vance smiled slightly, a rare, genuine warmth in his eyes. "To your future, Alex." They landed minutes later on the rooftop of a towering skyscraper in the very heart of the city. Alex's breath caught as he stepped out onto the helipad, the wind whipping at his hair. The building was massive, sleek, and impossibly modern, a glass and steel monument to ambition. A colossal, illuminated logo gleamed on its side. Vance Holdings. Vance led him inside, past discreet security checkpoints and into a high-tech office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the breathtaking city skyline. Alex had never seen anything like it. "You are going to learn everything here," Vance said, gesturing expansively around the opulent space. "Business, leadership, innovation, advanced agriculture, technology development. You are not just a student anymore, Alex. You are an apprentice. You are part of the future of Vance Holdings." Alex's heart pounded, a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Why me, Mr. Vance? Why are you doing this?" Vance studied him for a moment, his gaze softening. "Because you remind me of myself, Alex. I was once the boy no one believed in, the one dismissed because of his origins. But someone gave me a chance. Now it is my turn to do the same for you." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. He thought back to the endless days he spent working on the farm, the struggles, the people who had underestimated him, the humiliation he had endured. And now, here he was, standing in the office of one of the most powerful men in the world, on the precipice of a future he couldn't have even dreamed of. Vance placed a firm, reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This is only the beginning, Alex. You are going to prove them all wrong." Alex nodded, a newfound resolve settling deep within him. For the first time in his life, he didn't just hope for a better future. He knew it was coming. He was ready to build it. What an incredible turn of events, right? Alex's journey from despair to a dazzling new future truly shows that potential knows no bounds. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced an obstacle that felt insurmountable, only for an unexpected champion to appear? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this powerful story captivated you and you want more narratives that inspire and uplift, don't just watch. Join our community. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another compelling tale. Your support helps us bring more impactful stories to life. Thank you for watching.